Welcome everyone to the CFO Swinger Watch newsletter's technical analysis video for the week of April 22nd through 26th. With that, let's start off with the market. So the S&P 500 has made and created a very nice waterfall to the downside. In fact, we've had this waterfall price action for 6 consecutive trading days, right? So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And it seems like we're continuously moving further and further away from our daily 50 SMA, which is my dark blue line here. And it seems like we are trying to continue to drive lower. Now, from a probability standpoint, it's pretty rare to see a 7th consecutive down day. So to me personally, what I would assume that could occur tomorrow is that we actually have a weaker market open, and then we drive lower pretty rapidly, and then we quickly pivot back to the upside and eventually ending positive on the close. And so now I don't really know if we're going to be seeing a doji candlestick, a nice dragonfly doji specifically, or a hammer candlestick, but whatever it is, ideally I would want to see a nice green reversal type of a daily candlestick. Now, another way to kind of confirm my quote-unquote assumption here for a potential reversal back to the upside is that the relative strength index, the RSI, is at 31.03. So it's only a difference of 1.03 before we see the RSI at the actual oversold value of 30. So if we do get that opening drive lower in the early morning hours, we could be seeing the RSI officially touching 30 before we have a very nice snap back up and potentially see a snapback rally to the upside for this entirety of this week, or maybe even into next week as well. Now, I put in way more details on this for this potential phenomenon that could occur in the market summary. So make sure you guys read the newsletter first before you watch this video. There's always way more detailed information that you guys have to read first before you watch this technical analysis video. Now, for the S&P 500, so far as an update, we have been following this very crude drawing that I've drawn last week, I believe on Tuesday's live stream, where I basically told you guys that I'm expecting the 50 SMA to kind of flatline and then curl down as it tries to catch up to the price. So if I zoom in a little bit closer and take out this line here, that's exactly what we've been doing. And mind you, I've drawn this on Tuesday, right? And the 50 SMA was sitting right around here. It was just poking out of this nice big bearish candlestick. And so far, I've been very accurate with my drawing here. And so now, despite the accuracy of my drawing, what this tells us is that the daily 10 and the daily 21 SMAs have a chance to catch up. And so far, it's catching up because the daily 10 SMA has officially crossed to the downside, which means it can also help us with the probability of a bounce back to the upside so that we can, at the minimum, retest this daily 10 SMA. Hence, another reason to believe that from a probability standpoint, we could be seeing a nice snapback rally early into this week, or possibly, ideally, for the rest of the week and into next week. But overall, the price should wait before heading lower to allow the daily 10 and even the daily 21 SMAs to catch up to the price or the candlesticks, and so that we can see the price retesting both of my 10 and 21 momentum short-term SMAs as an area or areas of resistances, okay, SMA resistances. And if possible, if we are able to slightly break over the daily 21 SMA, so that means we need to obviously retest and reclaim over the daily 10, I would love to see a retest of this daily 50 SMA since we did not see an initial retest of this daily 50 after we broke below it last Monday. All right, so that is my very quick outlook on the S&P 500. All right, with that, let's start off with our first ticker for this week. Now, I'm going to be doing this video a little bit unconventionally because I'll be doing a lot shorter analysis, technical analysis on these videos from this point forward because I want to put in a lot more details, which I did this week as well, onto the newsletter. A lot more the technical analysis details that you guys should read. So make sure you guys read the newsletter from top to bottom. Literally scour it from top to bottom before you watch this more of a summarized or generalized technical analysis video. All right, so for any of the public viewers, you guys will have to get past that paywall to be able to watch, before you guys are able to read the actual newsletter that has a lot more details on my technical analysis for every single swing trade idea for each single trading week. All right, so first of all, we have RIO. So RIO is looking really, really good. Now, I've also mentioned this in the past where a lot of the commodity related names or like mining names like RIO are really just looking very similar technically because RIO has this massive macro wedge chart pattern on this weekly time frame. So this one has been forming since May of 2021. So it's been 3 years. So, well, nearly 3 years. And this wedge looks like a uranium wedge or a copper wedge, which I've also shown you guys in the past couple of weeks. And so if those names or those groups have officially broken out, well, it would be right of me to assume that in a related sector and group, I would expect to see a commodity related name like RIO, a mining company, to be able to break to the upside and break away from this massive macro wedge chart pattern. So in order to be able to see that, we need to look closer to the current price action. So on the weekly time frame, we have just lifted away from this ascending support trend line that creates this massive macro wedge chart pattern. And so far, we're now back at the mid area, the midline of this massive macro wedge chart pattern. And so far, we have the $68 resistance level right in the middle that cuts through the middle of this wedge chart pattern. And we have been respecting it for the past 2 weeks. And so I love the fact that we have actually ended last week as a hammer candlestick on the weekly time frame. Now, it doesn't really matter whether it's green or red, because all I'm caring about is the fact that we have a very nice long wick at the bottom, which indicates that there is buying pressure. Now, the one single thing that I want to see this week on RIO is an increase in volume. So way bigger volume than last week, where last week's volume was already over the average weekly volume of 13.8 million. So last week's volume was sitting at 17.4 million. So if we're able to break over this $68 resistance level, this whole number level, then our entry point will be over 68.10. Now again, we need to see some very good volume going into this name before we see an official entry point over $68.10. Now, the next thing that I really like about this name is the fact that all my SMAs are starting to coil once again because, for example, like my 10 and 21 SMAs have coiled with the weekly 50 and 200, but then it decided to move away from it, and now it's right back into, at the very least, retesting and touching and crossing my weekly 50 and 200 SMAs. So that basically tells me that in the next couple of days or weeks, we should be seeing some sort of an impulsive breakout to the upside. Now, again, I am a bit biased to the upside because, again, these macro wedge chart patterns are neutral. They do not have a specific breakout to the upside or to the downside. It can provide both. So just based on the fact that we have seen previous commodities that have a similar or even just a picture perfect parallel macro wedge chart pattern on the weekly time frames, they tend to break to the upside, right? And based on all the macroeconomic issues and risks that we're facing right now that I've also outlined and highlighted in the market summary, are really just pushing all of these related names higher, right? So Rio, I've given you guys the entry points, the stop losses, and all the price targets in the newsletter as well. So make sure you guys read that. So our second name here is TECK, or TECK. TECK Resources. So TECK Resources is another name, yet another commodity related name, another mining company that has broken out of its massive weekly macro wedge chart pattern. That was a whole lot of words to say there. And what I like about this one is that just like with uranium and copper, we have already broken out. So that means it's a lot easier to understand where we need to be looking at this name from a trend standpoint. And clearly it's to the upside. So for TECK here, the weekly time frame looks a little bit precarious. Now, why is that? Well, first of all, we made a lower high pivot point compared to last week's pivot high point at 50.46. And last week's previous high point was 49.05. So with this lower high pivot point also came with an official lower low pivot point. All right, so we went below last week's low. And so that tells me that there is some bullish momentum that's dying down. So we don't have to see another lower low, but we can actually see just a simple sideways price action as the weekly price ranges start to tighten up. And why would they do that? Well, because we're trying to allow the weekly 10 and weekly 21 SMAs to catch up, because right now we are pretty far away from a weekly perspective and time frame from this weekly 10 SMA. So we're about a little over 7.50% away from this weekly 10 SMA. And so we want to see that gap closing, which means that we either move sideways or we break to the downside and we make, yet again, a lower high and lower low. But here's the thing, that would still be considered consolidation from this breakout, because why? The price is still above both of my weekly 10 and weekly 21 SMAs. Right? That's telling us that the short-term momentum, short to mid-term momentum, is to the upside. Now, why do I say midterm? Because we're looking at the weekly time frame and the weekly 10 and 21 SMAs. Okay, so now if I go back on the daily time frame though, right, things are slightly different because the price has actually broken below the daily 10 SMA and it has already retested the daily 21 SMA last Tuesday. And so it looks like after Friday's close below the daily 10 SMA, there could be a possibility tomorrow that we can actually retest this daily 21 SMA for a second time and then eventually even break lower. But again, I would like to be a bit optimistic and positive. I would like to think that we hold the daily 21 SMA, pivot away, and eventually break out. And where do you want to break out? Well, we start to make this nice descending, this micro descending resistance trend line. Obviously, the reason why I am saying it's a micro trend line is that, well, we just broke out of this massive descending resistance trend line that makes up that massive macro wedge chart pattern. And so relative to this trend line, all right, this is very, very puny. So hopefully, crossing my fingers, we can see a nice breakout out of this trend line, which gives us our official entry point to the long side over $48, or specifically at 48.10. Now, if we do see a break below the daily 21 SMA, well, that's unfortunate. However, there are two pivot areas that we can rely on, either 46 or 45. Now, 46 has been the official pivot area back in Tuesday of last week, which was also coinciding with this rising daily 21 SMA However, if we break below the daily 21 as an area of SMA support, then there's a likely chance that we break below 46, which is the reason why we can see a retest of 45, which is a more significant support level, a whole number support level, and we can see a nice bounce there, which also gives us that nice long bounce at 45. Now, obviously, if you guys want a little bit more of a confirmation, I would say 45.10 can also work. But in this case, I will want to be trying to get a nice specific entry point at 45.00 so that I can get a nice quote-unquote sneaky buyback into this potential reversal to the upside. Okay, now that's only going to happen if we break below both of my 10 and 21 SMAs officially. Okay, so again, I've given you guys the entry points, the stop losses, and all my profit targets on this name in the newsletter, so make sure you guys read it. And last but not least, we have JBLU, okay, JetBlue. And I've given you guys a reason why we're looking at this specific airline name, so make sure you guys read the market summary. But JBLU, if I go back in the weekly time frame, looks absolutely amazing. Why? Number one, we have what we call a textbook uptrend. Okay. And first of all, we have this nice price path, this generalized and summarized price path structure that I've basically drawn here right now. And what this is kind of describing here is that we've seen a nice pivot from lows. I believe it is all-time lows actually. Oh, no, not all-time lows, but I think it's the 52-week lows here. And after pivoting away from those 52-week lows, we've made a higher high, higher low, higher high, and higher low twice. Now, currently, we have not officiated this second higher low. Why? Because we have not yet made another third higher high. And that's exactly where we want to be involved with this name. So, if I go on the daily time frame now, okay, we have this very nice ascending support trend line, which is demonstrating the fact that we have these two higher low pivot points, but this current pivot point is not yet confirmed because we need to break over the current higher high pivot point. And I believe it's right here at 7.55, right? So that's the exact level that we need to break over in order to make that third higher high pivot point and also the third higher low pivot point, and obviously to confirm this second higher low pivot point. That's a lot of words there, so make sure you guys do not get confused because sometimes I get confused as well as I'm saying them. So JBLU definitely looks amazing on a daily time frame as well, because we started to essentially move sideways to consolidate this second impulsive run up to the upside, where we ultimately saw that first retest of 7.55, which also happened to be a previous level of support and a previous level of resistance. Okay, so previous level of support here, resistance here, resistance over here, and etc. Right? So now it's a level of resistance again, since the price is consistently rejecting at the 7.55 level, which is the reason why our entry point is over 7.55. And this is kind of what I want to see for JBLU in the next few coming weeks. Now, what I love about this is that I love the fact that the daily 200 SMA is now curling down. And what does that mean? Well, that means that the current price action is actively trying to move away from my long-term SMAs like the 50 and the 200. Yes, the 50 is still climbing up higher to support the price up higher, but the ultimate goal is to always be moving away from my larger SMAs like the 50 and 200 that I have on my daily time frame, and continue to rocket up higher while getting support, short to mid-term support, or most likely just a short-term support from my daily 10 and daily 21 SMAs. Okay, so now the only thing that I do not like about the last two trading candlesticks on a daily time frame is the fact that we've had this very large and long top wick last Thursday, and another rather long top wick on Friday. And that tells me that there are still a lot of supply, overhead supply, and sellers right underneath 7.55, which is dragging the price back down. But hopefully, we can see earnings acting as a catalyst to officially break over 7.55, which can give us a potential orb earnings trade, an opening range breakout trade, where if we do see a breakout over 7.55 during pre-market hours, we can have a very strong open at market open and see a nice drive up higher where the price just simply rockets up higher, right? We've seen that happen last week on another airline named UAL, right? Where we gapped up and then we had a huge orb to the upside. Right, so that is something that you guys should be watching for JBLU as we head into earnings on Tuesday pre-market hours. All right, now there are earnings for our other two tickers that I just went over, so make sure you guys read the newsletter as well for each of those two tickers and swing trade ideas. All right, so that is it for tonight. Hopefully you guys enjoyed this technical analysis. Most likely just a general technical analysis video. But if you guys want more of the juicy details on my technical analysis for all three swing trade ideas, make sure you guys join us for the CFO Swinger Watch newsletter so that you guys can get all those juicy details on every single ticker that we look at for every single week. All right, so I will see you guys next week, and good luck, and I will see everyone else tomorrow morning on Monday.